that expression that we got for the evolution probability from so this was the probability amplitude for evolution from the position Q1 to QF is equal to TP dq e to the power I SPQ. If you remember, I showed this where SPQ was integral Ti to Tf dt PQ dot minus H, which is a function of PQ, and dP was is equal to, sorry, for all possible n, so this was the expression that we had, and of course we had this integral over dp dq for all possible configuration, and all possible configuration means, as you remember, that this all possible p and q means that in your Qt space you had if you have some initial Qi at time Ti and Qf at time Tf, so you can go from any Q to any other Q, so you can go like this to this, you can take another path, so whatever, so it includes all kind of path, and of course all kind of path in the momentum space also. So you are actually including all kind of path in phase space, and finally calculating the amplitude from the initial point T1 to the final point Tf. Then last time I concluded that we want to have a more usable form of path integral, a more useful form. And I told you that if you recall the transfer matrix, it was just this QL to QL plus 1. So I remember I introduced, so you remember I introduced transfer matrix here earlier. Here. So it is just, if you remember, from QL to QL plus 1, this was introducing one complete set of P. And then I know that the entire path was kind of summation over all possible L's from initial to final F. So the transfer matrix tells you about this one such element, and which, if you remember, by introducing that complete set of momentum eigenstates, I showed that this is e to the power I over h cross in appropriate unit. If you want, you can put also equal to QLP minus I delta t. So this was only for small infinitesimal time interval delta t plus VQ, and this was that infinitesimal time interval delta t, where it has gone from L to QL to QL plus 1, and this is summing over all possible momentum states. Now, I pointed out that there is a problem that this integral oscillates with P and Q, because if e to the power IP, and you know e to the power I theta is an oscillatory function with respect to theta. So it's oscillatory function not only with, here I'm talking about P more importantly. I'm talking more with P because here you can see that my integral is over P, but ultimately you will see that there will be integral over Q also, so it will be oscillatory function of Q also. But for the moment, suppose you focus that the oscillatory function of P, so for large P, this function will not, fall off in that sense. So a way to handle this. So if you do, and remember why I'm saying all this, because you know that when you are doing an infinite integral over the infinite space, then unless the integral falls off near the plus infinity or minus infinity, then the convergence of this quantity becomes a bit questionable. And because the integral is summation, so if each term of the summation they become oscillatory, and if you are asked to do an infinite sum, then you have the serious problem of convergence. So what I do, I take an analytic continuation. Okay, so to do that, I do the following. I change delta t, make a small shift, okay, by going to a little bit of imaginary component t, that is, suppose delta t to delta t 1 minus I epsilon.
So, sir, time is an infinitesimal generator over here of some symmetry.
Time is not a generator. Hamiltonian is the generator. It is always Hamiltonian is the generator of time translation. What I'm doing, I'm considering a small shift of the time part. So let me explain what I'm doing. So let me write, and you will see that how the transfer matrix gets. So what so far I'm not doing anything. Time is not a generator, but Hamiltonian time is not an operator, right? So a generator has to be an operator.
Okay, so are you performing a Wick rotation?
I'm performing a Wick rotation, but without using the technical language, let me say that I'm redefining my delta t to be delta t to 1 minus I epsilon. And you cannot object to this, because eventually we will take limit epsilon goes to 0. Then there is no problem. P minus I delta t 1 minus I epsilon into P square by twice n plus So I can see that in this place of I delta t, I will replace I delta t 1 minus I epsilon. Now, as long as epsilon goes to, epsilon is greater than 0, the integral is well defined because the coefficient of p square is negative. So I told you that what I have done, you can say that who has given me the right to do this? I said nobody has given me right. I am just taking infinitesimal. So imagine that when you take the limiting value of a function at a point, what you do, you consider the value of the function not exactly at x, but as x equal to x plus delta x, and then you take the delta x goes to 0. So here I am doing the same thing. I am changing delta t by an infinitesimal amount epsilon, but in the complex plane, and changing that eventually I take epsilon equal to 0. So delta t remains delta t. So it's a kind of limiting value of the function. So you, in a very jargonistic language, you call it weak rotation. But the thing is that basically we are doing this. But as a result, what you can see that I delta t. So look at this term. Look at this thing. So minus plus at epsilon is greater than 0. So I square is minus 1. So this introduced a term minus of epsilon p square by 2 So when you integrate over dt, the divergence of the integral, that integral was blowing up, which was earlier because of the oscillatory function of p. Now what will happen? This will have an oscillatory nature. So nobody knows what is value actually. But now because of the suppression of minus p square by 2 so if an integral dp minus p square by 2 then minus p square by 2 will give a huge suppression as p goes to infinity. As p goes to infinity in the integral, so this p is minus infinity to plus infinity. So this gives you a huge suppression, quadratic suppression minus p square by 2 As a result, this oscillatory function which oscillates between plus 1 and minus 1, e to the power I theta oscillates between plus 1 and minus 1. So this will be enormously suppressed by this. So what I have achieved by introducing this delta t to this, that I have introduced a negative coefficient here. So the above integral is written as t ql plus 1 ql. Now you just follow what I am doing. I am writing minus I delta t times vq. Why I am taking it outside the integral? Because potential is not a function of p. Potential is a function of q. So I can take this term outside the integral. So that is exactly what I am doing, because I am integrating over p, but q is not changing. So I am taking this all the constant term outside the integral, and what I am remained with is integral dp e to the power minus half sub capital A p square plus capital B p. Let me tell you what is A and B from here. A is this coefficient and B is the coefficient of the linear part of P. So I am writing what is A, where A is, you can check that is pretty simple, epsilon delta t by m minus I delta t by m, delta t by 2m, I'm sorry. And no, there will be cancellation of 2. Let me check. I delta t. So this is a p square coefficient. So p square by 2 So okay. So what I am doing, I have kept the half here, right? I have kept the half here. So there will be no 2 here. So 2 will be taken away. I delta t by m and B is I times QL plus 1 minus QL. Now you can immediately check that this is B, this coefficient of P, this is B, and this other coefficient is A. And now you can see this integral is now looking as this integral is basically it's a Gaussian integral. And we know how to work out Gaussian integral. That is simple. So now, therefore, minus half AP squared plus BP, I can always write as equal to minus half A P minus B by A whole square plus B square by 2A square. This will agree, I hope. So I can write this as this.
So there should be one more term for the e to the power q, no?
Why?
Because first of all,
No, see, e to the power minus I delta T VQ, minus I delta VQ. And are you saying that e to the power minus I epsilon VQ? Okay, so, okay, fine. So, for this term, I have already taken
আচ্ছা you got it
epsilon goes to 0.
ঠিক আছে
Okay.
আচ্ছা good.
Okay. So now you redefine, and I ask you that for A also, for A, you remember this as epsilon goes to 0, A goes to minus I delta T by M. Right? You look at A, epsilon goes to 0, only the minus intermediate comes. Remains. So, okay, fine. So now, in this integral, shift the integral P prime equal to P minus P by A, which makes dP prime equal to dP. So now I can write the integral.
Sir, one more thing.
Yes.
Sir, for A, both the signs will be of the same direction, or you have written plus and then second term is minus. So I think that should both should be minus.
No, here it is minus. So what is A? I have kept the minus term here, right? So I have kept the minus term here. So now you see that for A, I have minus I delta T by M because 2 I have kept. So one term is, you can check that one term is minus I delta T by M, which is this. Minus I delta T by M. Right? Just a minute. And the other term is plus minus, so other minus P square by twice M. So the other term is just a minute. Can I minus I delta T by M and epsilon delta T by M. One is minus plus minus. Oh, both are minus, right?
Both are minus, yeah. That's
What Sure. No, both will not be minus. Do you know? This will be plus because in my integral, I have kept my integral as e to the power minus half AP square plus BP. Here I have kept the minus side here.
So but both the sides will be either plus or both the sides will be either minus. Why?
I agree. But when you are taking the limit epsilon goes to 0, this term goes to 0.
Yeah. So
try to understand. No. Let me tell you. No, be careful. Minus I delta T by M. See, I'm first look at here. Minus I delta T by M. Right? Minus I delta T by M is one term, which is coefficient minus I delta T by M into P square. Right? Minus I delta T by M into P square. So now I have written already minus side is there. Oh, I agree. Both the time will be plus. I agree. Now it's fine, right?
Now it's fine.
Okay. No, for the that is true. Now it is fine. Minus I delta T by M. Yes, let me check. Minus I delta T by M. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Fine. So now the integral becomes e to the power minus half AP square plus BP. This becomes e to the power B square by twice A minus infinity to plus infinity dP prime e to the power minus half AP prime square into dP prime. dP prime I have written already. And do you know what is the integral e to the power B square by twice A? Do you know its value is 2 pi by A whole to the power half? Do you know this Gaussian integral? Have you ever seen it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know it, right? So now this integral becomes so 2 pi by A. So in the limit epsilon goes to 0, 2 pi by A whole to the power half becomes equals to m by m by 2 pi I delta t half, and I call it equal to some constancy. So now the transfer matrix becomes half times e to the power I delta t sorry 1 minus I epsilon m by 2 QL plus 1 minus QL. This term was remaining, if you remember, divided by delta t 1 minus I epsilon minus VQ. We just check this. This is trivial because these are the term finally that remains for this, and this IVQ term, everything was remaining in the outside. So finally, you are left with this term. I will send you this entire calculation by mail at the end of the year, and you can just check it. So finally, these are some very trivial algebra I am doing. So in the limit, therefore in the limit epsilon goes to 0. If I now substitute finally in my original expression u df ti qi, this becomes is equal to n by 2 pi I delta t whole to the power n by t. You will see that this many number of integral will come. So half and n times such things. So we'll have, but now you are left with the integral dq. So there will be n minus 1 such interval from 1 to n. So dq n minus 1 dot to dq1. Remember, if you have dq1, dq2, dq3, and there are how many interval? If 1, qi and qf. So there are n minus number one of partition, small dq1, dq2, dq3. If you remember that picture that I drew, this into e to the power I summation over n delta t, if you remember, because now I am writing the full u. Earlier I wrote the transfer matrix, so now I delta t m by 2 qn plus 1 minus qn whole square by delta t minus vq. So remember this term, the VQ came out earlier from the integral, and this term came from that when you converted the Gaussian integral into a whole square, this B square term gave you this B square term. So this remains, and Q integral was already there outside. I did the P integral, so only the Q integral remains, and this is the expression that I get. So it looks pretty reasonable now. So now I can write this as this thing as, so if you write TQ now, if I write as summation over n, that C that I defined earlier, that constant it was sitting earlier, dqn, then QF U TF TI QI finally you got C keeps C outside. C keeps C intact. Don't handle C TQ e to the power I SQ. So it is from QI to QF, where QI is nothing but Q at TI. QF is nothing but Q at TF. The end point. C I wrote earlier. And S is TI to TF dt m by 2 q dot square minus VQ. Okay, let me explain you from where I got this. See, here I had Qn plus 1, my Qn summation over all possible n divided by delta t. So in the limit delta t goes to 0, this term become q dot square. So this becomes m by 2 q dot square. So take the limit. In the limit, delta t goes to 0. So Qn plus 1 minus Qn here divided by delta t gives you q dot square. So this is q dot square m by 2, and this is minus VQ. So you can see that I have got my original Lagrangian action. So after doing this, and I have now written this entire thing is in a much more interesting form, that is form of the transition probability amplitude from QI to QF. Simply summation over all possible path, but now the path is not in phase space. So remember, the momentum space integral has been carried out. So now I have only path in our configuration space, that is our coordinate space, all possible path times e to the power I SQ. But now this S is the Lagrangian action. This is basically your kinetic energy minus potential energy, your Lagrangian. So it is your Lagrangian. So what you wrote earlier, now after doing out the P integral, I have now written in a form which contains only the path in the coordinate space. So now you know that from an initial point QI to a final point QF, a particle can go along various paths, obviously, and these paths have given by this dq, where dq is carrying out with all dq and so all possible breakup of paths, times this weight factor e to the power ISQ, where S is now your old Lagrangian action, that is S is integral L dt from Ti to Tf. So now the question is, you may say that, see, in Schrodinger equation, suppose if I want to derive this quantity, that what is the probability of, it was initially at QF, what is the probability of getting it finally in the QI to QF? So we'll say, okay, I know that it is same, initially it is the eigenstate QI, and you know the time evolution operator, it is U TF Ti, and it takes you to QF. So you may say that, okay, so this should be the probability amplitude according to the Schrodinger equation from initial state Qi to final state Qf. Just as for any eigenvalue of some any operator this to this, it is the eigenvalue of the position operator Qi to eigenvalue of the position operator Qf. So we have found that actually in this process we have determined the transition amplitude from one point in space to another point in space, and it is showing that it is not just the variation of the integral LDT of the action S. So earlier you know that a classical trajectory, how did you do? You use this delta S equal to 0 and you found the classical trajectory. But now you see this quantum development of Feynman, it shows you that this is the classical, this SQ, the classical action is coming with ISQ. Now you sum over all possible paths and calculate your Lagrangian. So when you did the classical theory, what you did, you took your S to be integral LDT just as this, but you took the variation and said the particle travels from that point to that point, where if you calculate at every point Q and Q dot, this integral L, which is a function of Q and Q dot, calculated over every point, this integral value is an extremum value. So that was the result of Lagrange which you learned. What you learned now, according to quantum mechanics, a particle going from Qi to Qf, that Lagrange, the action which you extremized, now coming with weight factor for every path. That means now the probability of going from one path to another is summation over integral summation over all possible paths from one to, which is taking you from one to one. But for each path, there is a weight factor e to the power ISQ, which is giving you that what is the contribution of the probability to that path. So if you can imagine that this is a summation over all paths, each path having a characteristic e to the power is, and that s has to be calculated for that path, and that coming with that weight factor, and you taking the summation over all paths to know to go from this point to this point. So actually the electron when it goes from this to this, it actually travels through all the paths. It doesn't go from only at one path, and as a result it explains that why the electron is behaving like a wave which is distributed in space. You cannot say the electron has gone from this point to this point along a specific path. So it can travel along different paths, and that explains the experiment of the two slits, that how the electron is behaving like a wave, and it is the probability is calculating by summation over all such paths, which is basically the amplitude addition, which is called interference. So it is basically summation over all paths, and the interference of all the paths that from 2 slit to 3 slit to 4 slit, that picture that I showed is now reflected in this entire integral. So having understood this, that the meaning, so people even then ask a legitimate question. So this is beautiful. I absolutely, this is wonderful. But I knew that somewhere quantum mechanics were for Schrodinger equation. So Schrodinger equation had a different approach to the problem. So is there any equivalence to Schrodinger equation? I will not show. The answer is yes. So how to show this? I hope that you have understood the brilliance of the thought. I mean, the electron classically going from one point along that path where the LDT is extremized. Now it is going from that, going through all the paths, and calculate LDT action for each path, and put an appropriate weight factor for each path to calculate the total probability from going from one point to another. So that's the description, and this tells you that actually the probabilities are superposed, they are added, exactly the interference that what you do in your optics experiment. So to establish the equivalence to our old understanding of quantum mechanics, consider. Okay, let me ask. Do you have any question at this point? Let me ask you a 1 minute break. Any question?
So one thing, sir, what if we just perturb the system where near the classical trajectory?
No. See. This is. I will tell you about this. Seeing the system near classical trajectory. I'll come to that. Okay. But before going to that, first I have to establish that your old idea of quantum mechanics is related to this idea, right? I mean, this idea looks
Beautiful.
very beautiful, but it's very independent. Okay,
Yes,
so evolving from one eigenvalue to another, you are taking over all possible paths. Okay, with wave factor. This approach and Schrodinger approach is starting with a wave function. There is no wave function here, right? So how to handle this? So let me establish the connection so that you feel. So when you went from Schrodinger to Heisenberg, you knew that you are changing in your Hilbert space. You are actually making the dynamical variable time dependent by sitting on the state vector. State vector becomes irrelevant. So here I need to establish so that you feel happy about it that okay, Schrodinger, Heisenberg, and this path integral all are kind of saying the same thing, right?
Got it.
Okay. So consider an infinitesimal time interval delta t. Suppose I will consider infinitesimal.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, we previously also saw that if we put a detector at only one slit, then we don't see any interference patterns.
So that is actually true. When you see one slit without any width of the slit, right? But what happens that you know the single slit diffraction pattern, well, you know that a single slit has a width, and every point on the slit acts as an independent source because they give you one independent path. So when the light from the source going to the screen, it is actually going through infinite number of paths if the slit has a finite width, right? So when we took two slits, each slit was a point slit. Then we took three slits and we said that there can be n number of slits and n number of points, and then we make it a continuum to make it blank. So you are saying that when the slit is one, but it's a point slit, of course there cannot be an interference. But if the slit has a finite width, which you learn Fraunhofer diffraction pattern, single slit diffraction pattern, there actually you had many points on the slits, right? Okay.
Sir, I was saying like we just derived how to go from one point to another. Then like if we only have that one point slit, just as 2 classes ago we did that discussion. So means that weight factor of that one path is very high, and is it like that? Like how do we interpret it using what we just did?
No. If you make a point slit, then what happens? Suppose this has a zero width. This is a very ideal situation. This never happens. Let me tell you. Suppose this is a very zero width. So this starts acting as a new source. Suppose if you have S1. So when the light reaches here, this point emits a Huygens. You have learned Huygens construction, right? So it emits secondary wavelets. So this point on this main wavefront, this point emits a secondary wavelet and it goes. Right? So the thing is that those secondary wavelets, because of diffraction, it will bend. There is no question. It will bend. It will not travel in a straight line. But having a point is a very ideal concept, right? Can you imagine a point slit? It never happens. So every slit actually, let me tell you, every slit actually is a slit of whatever be the width, whatever be the small width. And now, for each of them, defines one path. So, from source to the screen, each of them defines a path. So, when it's going from here to here, so what you are doing, suppose there is a classical path, you are all constraining all the other paths to be very close to classical path. That is true, but still there is a summation over many paths, which gives you an interference, which is a single slit interference. Try to understand one thing, that the existence of multiple number of paths will always be there. You cannot stop it, because whenever something passes through even a small width, there are infinite number of paths now. So this is a kind of Feynman path integral is a kind of explanation that why we see at all interference, because all the other paths apart from the classical path, all the other paths, they are coherent paths, and they are all superposed to form the total probability amplitude. And probability amplitude is basically the amplitude of the light that you see on the screen, and that probability amplitude can be constructive or destructive, and it produces the resulting pattern. What what Akshay was asking, that whether it is if the paths are all very close to classical paths, what will happen? I will come to this question. This is an important thing. I will come. That will be our next day topic. So first today, let us all be confident that this approach of seeing the evolution, time evolution in a probabilistic way is actually, this entire path integral is actually can give rise to Schrodinger equation, which you knew, because then that will give you some confidence. Do you understand what I mean? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll come to this classical path and paths around. If the path is squeezed to a very small width, we'll come to all these points. So now consider a small time interval. Let us call it t. That's not the point. Okay, so time interval t. Now, and eventually we'll consider this to be very, very small. So from the expression of u, Tf equal to T and Qf and
sorry, expression of what you have
from
written,
the
expression of
u
Acha.
u time evolution. So now we have seen that the expression that you got is m by 2 pi I h cross epsilon whole to the power half e to the power I epsilon by h cross no, I'm sorry. T by h cross. Just a minute, please hold on. পার্থ বলো তাড়াতাড়ি বলো। হ্যাঁ, আমি বুঝেছি, কিন্তু না আই আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ড। তোমাদের যেটা বুঝতে হবে যে তোমাদের কিন্তু একটা পয়েন্ট so this was t, and so remember that there was a delta t. Okay, let me show you. There was a delta t here. You see that there was a delta t here. So that delta t now I am calling t. So t e to the power I t over h cross m by 2. If you remember, I showed you that it will be qf minus qi squared by t minus v qf plus qi by 2 kind of thing. So let me explain what I have done. Look into this expression for an infinitesimal time interval. So I call that delta t to be t. So this will be something like, and that one end, the delta t small time interval, one is qy, other is qf. So consider I and f are separated by infinitesimal time interval. And this potential calculate qn, which is somewhere within the small time, is the average of the value of the potential at qi and qf. So qi plus qf by 2 and in some average point. So it's m by 2 qf minus qi whole square by t. So I have written the same expression earlier. It was called delta t. In delta t goes to 0 y dot q dot square. But now I have written it explicitly for a very small time interval. Delta t I have written as q. Now, also I know psi, the whole approach of Schrodinger was psi q epsilon was minus infinity to plus infinity. Now I am introducing a variable q dq prime, where it is telling you from u calculated at t some q, and initially time was 0. So this is the final q, and initially it was some qy and psi q prime 0 summation over all q prime. So remember that this expression of psi, that psi actually was evolved, if you remember, from 0 to t by an evolution. So this is what I have done. I have basically introduced the evolution operator, which is taking psi at q prime 0 to qt. So what it is doing, it is changing psi from q prime 0 to qt. So why I have introduced this? I have introduced this because I have introduced a complete set of all possible q in between. So I don't know whether, do you remember your time dependent perturbation theory? Do you all of you remember this? Can you please tell me, then I'll use that to explain you this in bigger details. Do you remember, or you don't remember?
Yes, sir. Remember.
So there you had some initial state I, you remember, and a final state f, right? So what I am doing now here, basically, so this was the probability amplitude. So going to f, but I am now getting rid of this f. So I am saying that I am considering only the evolution of the state I to some final state q, and whether that final state q will have a qf, then I'll have to take the dual product. And when I'm writing this, I'm introducing if, so what I'm doing, so this is my final state q, I'm introducing a full q prime. Wait a minute, just a minute. Let me explain you in bigger details. So all of you know that I had an initial state I, and then I evolve with u, and the final state I given by some q, and what I do, I introduce a complete set of qq here, and I take summation over, or q prime here, integral over whole q prime, and this thing, this object, this quantity q into this gives you the position representation of the initial state, which is psi of q prime 0. Remember this q prime. So this is from your time independent perturbation theory, that initial state leading to some final state qt. This also you know from this old idea of time evolution. It goes from q prime 0 to qt by this time evolution, where summation over dq prime comes because you introduced a complete set of q prime in between. So remember, I initial state, if you introduce complete set of q prime on the evolution operator, this complete set of q prime integral, this is equal to 1, and this actually makes the initial state psi to be at q prime at time equal to 0. So that is exactly what I have written here. So from your time independent perturbation theory, you understand the justification of writing this in the following way. So I can now write from this that psi of qt is equal to, I am now substituting for u m 2 pi I h cross by t. Remember this expression I have written upward. I'm going up. Just a minute. Give me a little time. This expression I wrote here. U was m by 2 pi h cross t just from my previous expression. This is t, mind. This is t. This is t. So this I wrote delta t. Please try to understand. Earlier I wrote delta t, which I am now writing t, because I'm taking that delta t small time interval to be t. So this is by t, and there was the integral over q dq prime. So I'm writing dq prime, and then I write the other terms in the expression. And what was the other terms? Other terms was e to the power I by m 2h cross t q minus q prime square. Remember, it's going from q from initial 0 to q, and in between all q prime was introduced as integral, minus this is all above standing minus I t by h cross v q plus q prime by 2. Q was initial state, q prime is the final state, and psi of q prime, q initial state q and q prime of integral 1 0. So it's q prime, sorry. So in this time psi, so I have just written this expression. Remember, I written this expression by substituting the expression of u here. Substituting the expression of u here. Now you introduce eta. So okay, so what I have done? I have done nothing. Actually, do you know what I have done? I have written down this expression again. This expression of again with taking, where is that expression? Just a minute, please hold on. I'm making it more explicit now for you. Here, I'm now writing this expression again, where this is evolving to some qi state to qf state, qi state to qf state. I'm just writing in terms of the psi, where this I have taken this delta t to be t and vqn to be t on plus tf, and then the initial state and final state I have written. So that is exactly what I have done here. Now you see psi q prime 0, psi qt, and that exponential at the top and integral over all possible dq prime. So that was there earlier. So I introduced eta equal to q prime minus q. So qf, remember qf equal to q, and suppose this is fixed. So d eta equal to q prime. So what I am saying, that I am assuming that my final point where it has gone is fixed. So now the q prime, which is the integral, d eta will, so q is fixed, so d of q is equal to 0, since dq equal to 0. So what I am saying, that I am summing over all possible q primes. Sorry, I am summing over all possible q primes. Now, all possible q primes with a final qf equal to q. And so initially, suppose you have some point, that I don't mind, but I am summing over all possible q primes. But those are all happening for within small time interval delta t equal to t. So I have considered a small time interval to see this. And I'll tell you why I have taken delta t equal to t. I mean, so I will explain that. So what you get is the following, that psi qt therefore is equal to m by 2 pi I h cross epsilon whole to the power half minus infinity to plus infinity d eta, because dq prime has been replaced by d eta. Now into exponential in by 2h cross t eta square minus it by h cross v q plus q prime to psi q prime is q plus eta at t equal to 0. Now, as delta t goes to t equal to t goes to 0, okay, then this term oscillates rapidly. Now why? Suppose you have a term e to the power I k theta. Now you know that if k is extremely okay. So now let me tell you what I'm trying to say. As t goes to 0, this term becomes extremely large. Therefore, even a small variation of theta will make a change by 2 pi, that is one full oscillation. E to the power I theta over 2 pi changes this. If k is very large, suppose k is tending to infinity, then even for infinitesimal change in theta, this function have oscillations. So for large k, e to the power I k theta becomes a violently oscillating function. Function of theta. This implies all contributions from this goes to 0 as we integrate over eta. So this means when you have such a term, but this term is very large because of the limit t goes to 0, delta t goes to 0, then eta square, when you're integrating, even for small integral it oscillates. So each oscillation produces from +1 to -1. So all of you know that a very rapidly oscillating function, so that even almost no change in eta producing a +1 and -1, that means there is any function of eta with it which will not even get an opportunity to change. So if you assume that the value of eta is almost remaining fixed, the other thing is almost not changing because of this large violent oscillation. If you integrate a rapidly oscillating function multiplied by with anything, then the integral is always 0. That cannot contribute. Please tell me whether it is clear to you or not. Is it clear to you? Can you, some of you, please answer?
Yes, sir, it seems to be clear.
Okay, because you understand that. Because almost with no variation of x, it rapidly fluctuates from plus to minus. So +1, -1, +1, all this start cancelling. +4, plus 0.75, some value of theta, and the -0.75. So it gives that value because for almost no change it oscillates. So therefore, the dominant contribution therefore comes from the region of integration where for which eta is greater than equal to 0 and less than equal to this coefficient. Sorry, this inverse of this coefficient. So less than equal to 2 pi h plus t by m to the power half. Only for this region, only for such a small variation, only for this you get some dominant contribution, because otherwise it will the whole thing will be totally fall off. So what we do, we now Taylor expand it.
Sir, one doubt.
Yes.
So how we are writing this inequality?
Yeah, we are writing because if eta is greater than this, then because of this violent oscillation, all the contribution falls off.
Okay.
Okay, so is there any kind of boundary condition that we are applying at psi? I mean, like it's one or something at some point.
Eta is basically q prime minus q, right? So do you remember eta is q prime q
Yes,
minus?
sir.
So what I am trying to say, for an infinitesimal change in path, okay, for a certain change in path, as long as this is lying within this, the contribution from the oscillatory part of the weight factors, that if something is beyond that, it will just be totally washed out. So if it is so small, then only probably it can have a contribution which will add up. So you are adding up some plus 2 minus this, right, to cancel. But if you do not get opportunity to go to -1 to the +1, that entire region, if you say confine yourself within smaller than that, then the cancellation will not happen. So what we are trying to say, that your cancellation term statement is correct because of the oscillating term plus minus, but whether it gets the opportunity to go from minus to plus, that question comes. It doesn't get the opportunity if you keep eta confined with this boundary. The integrand will not go to that range because of this. You are changing eta for a very small. So if you keep eta within, it is such a small change, then it will have some contribution. So the contribution will go away because of the fluctuation. When you are allowing the entire fluctuation of the periodicity to take place, if you do not allow the fluctuation of the function for the entire periodicity, then it will not happen. The cancellation will not take place. Do you understand what I mean, or I need to say again? Can you please tell me that whether you have understood or not?
Yes, sir, understood.
Okay. So we now Taylor expand. So let me do it as I go. You will understand it more. I can tell you. Sometimes doing the explicit mathematics gives you a better understanding. So if you now Taylor expand it, and Taylor expand it in terms of t, and neglect t. I mean, I should have written it delta t probably, but I'm just writing delta so many times. So remember, this t is that infinitesimal t, and neglect terms of the order of t square. So if you do that, this psi q epsilon you have to do the Taylor expansion. So this I will not do for you, but I allow you to give you a little 2 and 3 algebraic steps. So 2 steps I am skipping. Just algebra, just Taylor expansion. 2 pi. But I am sure even seeing this step, you will understand what is going on. T whole to the power half, that coefficient is still there. Now comes integral d eta e to the power in eta squared by 2h cross t times I of q0 minus I t VQ by H cross psi of Q0. I'm just writing and you just check, plus eta psi prime of Q0 plus eta square by factorial 2 psi double prime of Q0 plus of the order of eta cube. And use the following identities. Minus infinity to plus infinity theta e to the power im 2 h cross theta square is equal to 2 pi I h cross t by m whole to the power half. So this is our answer. The other integral minus infinity to plus infinity eta e to the power im 2h cross theta square equal to 0 because it is an odd function times even function. And the other integral minus infinity to plus infinity theta eta square, this is also an even function. This will be non-zero. 2h cross theta square is equal to IH cross t by m. Sorry. Two pi IH plus t by m whole to the power half. So these are some of the integral I am giving, following integral identities. And so if you use this integral identities by solving, so if you want, if you're interested to calculate the integral, you can do that, but you do not have to do it. I don't think that is necessary because these integrals are well-known integrals. So substituting these in the
So, excuse me, what did you write there? It is IH bar T over?
IH cross T over, just a minute, it was probably, just a minute, let me check. M.
M. Oh, okay, sir. Thank you.
MM. Substitute these in the expression of psi qt, we find psi qt equal to m by 2 pi IH cross t whole to the power half times 2 pi IH cross t by m whole to the power half into psi of q0 minus I t. You just see that previous, you'll see this, everything will come out. This is very simple. H cross v of q times psi of q0 plus IH cross by twice m 2 pi, it is the other term, third term, h cross by m whole to the power half times psi double prime q0 plus of the order of epsilon square. So this gives you psi of q0 plus I h cross epsilon by twice m psi double prime of q0 minus I epsilon by h cross vq psi of q0 plus of the order of this is sorry dot epsilon sorry this t of the order of t square. So this implies psi qt minus psi q0 is equal to I t over h cross minus h cross square over twice m. See this term. So because since we have taken one h cross common in the denominator, this becomes h cross square by twice m. And I will take psi q0 outside. So at double prime I write del 2 del q square. Now minus not minus, I've taken the minus sign common. So plus vq acting on psi q acting on psi q0 plus of the order of t square. But t being infinitesimal delta t, psi qt minus psi q0, take this delta t in the denominator and take delta t. T means delta t, mind it. So in the limit t, that is delta t goes to 0, we have, and take I here and multiply numerator and h cross here. So I h cross del psi del t, because c t in the denominator delta t, h cross up I the denominator, but then you multiply. So I h cross, take the minus side also. You have to be careful about the signs. Is equal to minus h cross square. You have to be a little bit careful about the signs, whether I am making the signs correctly. Just a minute. Oh, here it will be minus. There is a minus sign here. Here it will be minus. Please make a small correction. Here it will be minus. So take minus sign in the denominator, then multiply up and minus, will become plus. So minus h cross square by twice m del 2 psi del q square plus v psi. So this is Schrodinger equation which you had earlier, and so you may ask me, what have I done? Actually, what have I done? You know what have I done? Basically, in the expression of this, in this expression which I wrote, the final expression, if you remember all of this, this was the final expression. I have calculated over a very small time evolution. Why? Because I have gone from an integral expression to a differential expression. So there are two kinds of equations. One is called integral equation, where I write in the form of integral, and then I can kind of taking an infinitesimal part of that integral. And if you take that infinitesimal part and the limit goes to 0, you get the corresponding differential form of that integral form, which you integrate to get this. So what I have proved, that taking, you see that my first starting point was when I say consider an infinitesimal time interval t. So taking that and just exploiting this expression, I have finally arrived at Schrodinger equation. So the lesson is that the Feynman path integral from a point q1 to q2, showing that it actually travels through all the paths with appropriate weight factor. What I now need to show that for classical particle, the classical path which you've got by just extremizing S, will have the highest contribution and all others are negligible contribution. That we will show next day. So that's a long calculation. And we will show it just not by, because you may say that for classical particle, what are the other paths? I mean, they are not there. I said, of course, they will be there. But you will see that we will give you numbers Numbers means just arithmetic numbers to show that what is the probability for classical paths. Suppose I show this is 0.75 and I will show you that a departure from that will give you 0.75 to the power 10 to the power say minus 50. So once you see numbers, you get convinced that okay, I really now understand that why the other paths contribution for a classical motion can be neglected. But what we have done here, we have shown that this all other path summation, that expression, which is extremely high for small particles, microscopic particles, other parts have equal contribution. They are not only giving you the picture of interference of different paths and amplitudes, it is also giving me that actually over an infinitesimal time interval of that Feynman path integral, it is the Schrodinger equation which is satisfied. So this now we are convinced that the path integral is nothing but an integral expression where psi is now expressed in terms of the initial position against it to another position against it. So psi can always be decomposed in terms of position eigenvalue by a simple technique also you know that psi can be written always as dq into q psi, which is nothing but dq of psi q. Sorry, q psi. So you can write this as dq of q, dq of q. Wait a minute. Psi q times q. So expressing psi q in the position eigenstate, I now have shown that what Niels Bohr taught us, that probability of finding the particle at initial point is mod square of psi of that point. I have now shown that that definition of psi and its time evolution is same as if you tell me that the psi q, the probability of finding the position at a particular initial moment, there it was 1, and what is the probability that it will be found in any other point qf? What actually Feynman gave us is absolutely consistent over an infinitesimal time interval. It is the differential equation given by Schrodinger so many years before. So the path integral formulation is basically this over a small time interval is Schrodinger equation, where the initial and final states are the position representation of your wave function. So this consistency has been established completely, and now we will do two things. One is your so-called classical path and path integral. That will be our one part of discussion. And the second part of discussion, finally, about some problems that can be solved in terms of free particle, harmonic oscillator, and maybe a couple of few more discussions I will try to do. And you get, finally, after tomorrow's thing, before that, you will have a complete understanding of Feynman path integral. That's beautiful description of that slit experiments, and then removing all slits, removing no barriers between slits, and it's basically an empty space. So there is no slit. So you are traveling through space is actually traveling through infinite number of slits, basically. And there you understood the meaning of paths, summation over paths. And Feynman path integral is a beautiful description of the probability, and now you understand for everything, not for microscopic particle. He never said that this is true for microscopic particles. So far what he has been doing is true for anything. Try to understand the power of the subject. What we need to do, we need to show you that for a small particle, the weight factors for the other things are contributing for this contributing for the large particles. Their classical path is the most contributing. But you will see that that is true simply because the value of the Planck's constant is so small. If the Planck's constant is large, then even for large objects, the non-classical paths will be relevant. So what Feynman path integral has the advantage, he doesn't care about the value of H cross. Whatever be the value, this is the expression. Now we are in our nature, we are living in a universe where there is a specific value of Planck's constant. And as a result, the classical trajectory becomes relevant for us for macroscopic objects. But what is the truth? What is the heart of the time evolution? Heart is path integral, not single path. So classical path is just an approximation. We understand that actually we travel through summation over all paths. Okay, so it is 4:30. I have to stop now. I have other meetings. So we will next day do the classical path and path integral and some interesting applications. But of course, I will have to do this, though that will not be given in the examination, calculating the hydrogen atom of the Dirac equation, but I will tell you what it is, how to do that, and etc. We will discuss about that thing. Discussing about few more problems, very simple problems, and I tell you, as far as the examination is concerned, just stick strictly to whatever I have taught, and the examination question will be simple. Don't worry about that at all. I don't believe in giving unnecessarily complication in examination. I would rather be happy to discuss with you complicated things in class rather than in examination. Answer a question. Yeah.
Sir, what have you written in the limit t in the first bracket?
Where? Here.
Yes,
Here.
sir. In the
That is delta t. So see, I should have written delta t, because I've always at the initial stage say consider a infinitesimal time interval t. Normally I write delta t, right? So that in the limit t goes to 0, you may find this is a very curious statement. Actually, this t means delta t. That is delta t. Okay, is that okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Because
Sir,
yeah.
Sir, how did you introduce the concept of psi when you were deriving?
I introduce the concept of psi. Okay, fine. How I introduce the concept of psi? So what is psi? Psi is the probability. So see, how did Schrodinger introduce? Schrodinger introduced psi is probability of finding the system in this state. So what we have proved that Schrodinger description of psi can be stated from here. Schrodinger description of psi can be stated from here. That is the probability of finding at q prime 0 because of the time evolution goes to probability of finding at psi qt. So see, this is the idea that you got when you learned your time-independent perturbation theory in Schrodinger system, that any state, initial state I, after evolution goes to the final state at t equal to 0 to t equal to t. So now I've taken the psi q prime and psi q, and I said, Schrodinger said that there is a probability of finding the psi in the state q. Now remember how Schrodinger got the idea of psi. So what was psi? Psi K vector he wrote dq q psi, that you can write always, and this is integral dq psi, and this I call psi q. Why? Because I know that I can expand the vector psi into any complete set of q, and the coefficient gives you the mod square psi q, gives you the probability of finding the system at psi q. So from here I picked up the idea of psi q, and then I used it in this expression. That time evolution gives you, where is that? Time evolution here. The time evolution from q0 to this is given by the u time evolution operator. Now using this, I now use the expression of u that I got previously from Feynman path integral. And using that expression of u, I arrived at Schrodinger equation. Is it clear now, the whole idea?
Yes, sir.
So you just go, so I'm sending you this. I'm sending you the PDF file. You just go through it carefully. Since I have another meeting now,